Well, big things have small beginnings. And I'm a stem cell advocate full-time. And I started a nonprofit organization. We create the largest interdisciplinary stem cell meeting in the World Stem Cell Summit. I founded a peer-reviewed journal called the World Stem Cell Report. How did that happen? Well, it started 10 years ago. And I was an attorney right in Miami, where I practiced many years. I used to do courtroom work, and I would come home from work and say, you know, I feel really good today. I sued someone. And I also did some fun things in my life. I was a co-owner of a minor league professional basketball team. I was commissioner of a professional wrestling federation, things in the candy store of life. So you might not think of me as a stem cell advocate. About 10 years ago, it was actually in December 2002, you might faintly remember that CNN broke in live and a group made an announcement right from Hollywood, Florida, that they had cloned the first baby. All right, I was watching television then, and I thought, how amazing, they cloned a baby? Who are these people? And as I'm watching the news, I realized they were tied in with some UFO sect. And then I started to remember, well, this group had testified in Congress. They had appeared before the National Academy of Sciences. Who was foisting these people in the public? And it was a breathless coverage that this had actually happened. They had cloned this baby. Well, I remember I had read a paper my daughter had written about Dolly the sheep in high school. I knew you couldn't clone a person safely. And also, these people were stampeding lawmakers and others. They were making outrageous claims, and lawmakers were ready to pass laws to ban a form of stem cell research, that might be really a powerful thing to cure disease. And I was a cancer survivor myself. I had colon cancer when I was 48. I'm standing here today thanks to biomedical research and great science and medicine. So as I thought about this, it occurred to me, well, someone should see if this group is really telling the truth. And I remembered my early days as a lawyer. I was practicing law in juvenile court, and anyone who's aware of a child that might be neglected or endangered, and they were promising some DNA test, but they weren't doing it. And I said, we should get a temporary guardian for this child, this alleged cloned child. Someone should test whether they're telling the truth or not. So on New Year's Eve, 2002, I drove up to the courthouse and I filed a motion for temporary guardian for the alleged cloned child. And I said, I'm going to test this, and maybe it'll be the first case ever to protect a human clone. And I went back home. And that night, as my wife and I are dressing to go out on New Year's Eve, across the bottom of the ticker on CNN, it said, Florida Attorney Bernard Siegel seeks custody of cloned baby. Cheryl turned to me and said, what did you do? Well, what had happened is I had gotten myself involved in a giant cause celeb. And a few nights later, I'm being interviewed by Anderson Cooper. I'm appearing on television with the head of this movement. And I was thinking, you know, a few days ago I was an ordinary attorney, now I'm debating a deity on world television on human cloning. How on earth did that happen? But it turned into a serious case. I served papers. They hired criminal defense attorneys. And suddenly I was getting the limousine treatment, and I was the person that was defending something called therapeutic cloning of stem cells, somatic cell nuclear transfer, and was against reproductive cloning. And all good lawyers, right? What we do, we don't have to be experts in the cases we present to the court. No, we hire the best experts. So I was reaching out to the top scientists of the world, and they were helping me. In 30 days, we burst the bubble on this scheme. It seemed to be nothing more than a publicity stunt. And when you thought I was just ready to go back after my 15 minutes of fame, back into my practice, two of the top scientists of the world, Rudolf Janisch, who won the National Medal of Science at MIT, and Dolly the sheep's father, Dr. Ian Wilmot, reached out to me and he said, Bernie, you know, we're under siege. This field has so much promise, and we would like your help to start a movement to work with the scientists and be a mouthpiece for science. I decided to leave the practice of law and actually undertake this as a cause, because stem cells, part of regenerative medicine, is so phenomenal. We have 100 trillion cells, little engines in our bodies, an adult. And these embryonic cells, which is part of this field, hold so much power. So much power. When Dr. Michael West first saw them in the lab, he compared it to atomic fission in a dish. And the promise of this research, that not only will we be able to discover the root cause of disease, but these could be tools for drug discovery and one day lead to cell therapies, regenerative medicine. So rather than drugs and surgery, would be able to regrow damaged tissue with cells. This is the future of medicine. If this is the future, we should go there sooner rather than later. And I had found my voice in that 30 days of media exposure, and I ended up leaving the practice of law. I went to Washington meeting every advocate I could. I went to the JDRF, I went to the Christopher Reeve Foundation, as it was called at that time. I met the people at the Biotechnology Industry Organization. I met and I was invited to the first meeting of the International Society of Stem Cell Research a decade ago. And I found that the scientists appreciated what I was doing. They came and became part of my board, the top scientists of the world. And there, the first thing we decided to do was to go to the United Nations. You saw an image before of Christopher Reeve, and I'm going to go back to that, because I was invited to do a science conference for the UN, to teach the UN the difference between unethical reproductive cloning of babies and the cloning of stem cells. And I was, as I was going to organize this conference, which was really extraordinary. I had never had anything to do with this before. I was not a diplomat, but I knew how to promote. And I reached out to Christopher Reeve, and I said, I'm going to present the top scientists of the world in this field, but I need to have a patient advocate. And he truly had a voice. I was invited to his home in Bedford, New York. And we brought in a film crew, and he spoke so eloquently in that moment, as I sat 3 feet from him, about hope and how the stem cell research meant hope for millions of people, patients, just like him, just like all of us. And in that moment, some 18 months after I had started this journey, closed my practice of law, and decided to be a full-time advocate, I was so moved by that. First of all, someone got what I was doing, and this gentleman would take the time. We did 2 video messages for the United Nations, one for the United Nations and one for a meeting that we were organizing of a patient advocacy group, a network of people on the internet called the Stem Cell Action Network. And we were organizing the first meeting of stem cell advocates in Berkeley, California at the time. It was happening 2 weeks after Nancy Reagan gave her famous talk that we have lost too much time and we must do something in this field. And advocates like myself were sleeping on each other's sofas, going around the country, creating a movement. Well, 2 weeks after the Reeve, I was received in Christopher Reeve's home, we did this videotape. We presented, my organization presented a conference in the United Nations. It dominated a news cycle. It was galvanizing the world because there was an effort in the UN to stampede a treaty, a world treaty, to ban a form of stem cell research worldwide. It was a fairly stealth matter, but my group was the whistleblower for this. And together with other advocates, large organizations, small organizations, and grassroots people, just like myself, we organized 35,000 fax letters to the United Nations. In a critical vote in the legal committee, the research was saved by a single vote. A single vote. And we went on and we were able to derail the treaty altogether. Little did I realize when I was with Christopher Reeve that day that he was at the end of his days. And within 6 months he would die. And I remember we played the video twice at the UN conference, and then we played it one more time one more time, a couple of weeks after his death, when we did a press conference for the United Nations with patients. And it was an extraordinary moment. What has resulted in 10 years of advocacy, and what I've seen, is there has been created a consumer movement that is different from anything that I've seen before. When you think about stem cells, 70% of this room, 70% of the people in the street, do you support stem cell research? And they will say yes. It's not because they have scientific knowledge necessarily, or medical knowledge, but they see stem cells as a personal health issue, not a public health issue, a personal health issue, something that impacts their lives and the lives of their loved ones, the lives of their loved ones, the lives of their friends. And when you have something like this, a personal health issue, it creates an incredible amount of power. It's the power of hope. And how does it manifest itself? In interesting ways. When stem cells have gone to the ballot, in California, they passed Proposition 71, which is a $3 billion funding agency, completely unique in the world at the time, a paradigm shift in funding to support stem cell research, and not just embryonic stem cells, adult stem cells, reprogrammed cells. And in Missouri and in Michigan, embryonic stem cell research is a constitutional right, what we would call a fundamental right in their state constitutions. This is a real movement that's out there. And we look at how the patients have united with the scientists, have united with a nascent industry, an industry that could be as exciting one day as the semiconductor industry or the internet in its impact. As we've moved this field forward, I think the thing that I've realized the most is that it's not a top-down movement. Sure, the lofty leaders of science can move the field forward, but scientists, as we often know, speak in jargon that the public can't understand. And it's not industry. Industry has a valid stake in this, and investors have a valid stake in all this. And that's exciting, and this is very, very transformative. And it could mean so much. But I don't think that's it as well. I look at it as the grassroots, the people. It's the bottom up that floats everything. That's what empowers change. That's what empowers movements that change the society. And when I think of Lincoln's quote, public sentiment is everything. With public sentiment, nothing can fail. Without it, nothing can succeed. So it's been my goal as an advocate to unite this world, to create a meeting not just of scientists but not industry, but a meeting that embraces the public. So if a patient wants to come and sit next to a cell biologist that only works with cells and forgets that there's a patient at the end of the rainbow here, the patient that's life depends on the hope of what's going on in a petri dish. If I can make that connection, if we can make that connection, this is the thing that really changes the world. So this is the movement that we have. We have people supporting a cause of the advancement of science. An obscure area of developmental biology is now something that the public understands, the public believes in, and the public hopes. In this day and age, and I conclude, in this day and age, we have is a special time because scientific and biomedical revolutions that used to take centuries or decades now can impact our lives, the lives of our children. One day, if I have grandchildren, the lives of my grandchildren. And it's why. It's the convergence. It's the nanotechnology. It's the imaging devices. It's the internet. These amazing technologies have brought all of this together for this time and this place. It's a transformative technology. It is the promise of hope. The London Times once wrote in a headline, "Could the cure for all diseases be banned?" Now our effort is transformative. It's translational. We're united more than just and active more than support for a single type of cell, but to engage all of these technologies to move this forward. Now we have to worry about the regulatory system. We have to worry about reimbursements. We have to worry about cell standardization and get this paradigm shift forward. How do we do it? We need everyone engaged. It's the power of hope. It's a transformative power of hope. Thank you.